Welcome, everybody, to Last Man Standing. I am Tony Farmer. He is Ryan Hogue wearing sunglasses for some reason. We have a mysterious day on the show today because Ryan has a special guest. He won't tell me who it is, and he suddenly put sunglasses on while our countdown was happening. So I don't know what the hell's going on, but I don't think anybody knows what the hell is going on in the NFL right now because there have been so many upsets through the first 2 weeks of the NFL season. If you're still alive in your survivor pool, whether it's Circus Survivor or otherwise, congratulations. Quick update on where things stand in Survivor before I turn it over to Ryan. 73% of the entire field has been knocked out. That's 3,878 entries are left out of the original 14,266 in our quest for $14.266 million. And Ryan, last night, 785 people were knocked out on the Eagles. As a former NFL player, I've got to get your reaction to the finish of that Eagles-Falcons game last night.
Yeah, coaching malpractice. I have these shades on just so you know because my picks have been so bright that I just needed to tone it down a little bit. Yeah, you know, we knew it was going to be a close game. We talked about that a bunch last week. But, yeah, I mean, you know, Saquon Barkley is going to have nightmares about that drop pass, and I'm sure he's received a lot of hate, Instagram DMs and things like that. But at the end of the day, that's coaching for not running the football. You know, after the first 4 runs of the night, I mean, Saquon went, 9, 11, 11, 10. It was 4 runs for 40 yards, and then they barely came back to him the rest of the game. It was, again, coaching malpractice, really, really poor job of finishing the game. We call it 4-minute offense when you have the ball and a chance to go and kind of take the air out of the ball and end the game. They did not do that. Monday night, Kirk Cousins, I know you love Monday night Kirk. He came through in the clutch. I've always been a big Kirk Cousins fan, being a Minnesota Vikings fan. And so really fun, really good for us because, you know, as Survivor enthusiasts and people that were on that game, we obviously were cheering against the majority, which in this case was 9%?
Yeah, we were rooting for carnage for those folks to get knocked out. And it's really a shame, I think, that so many people today, rightfully so, are talking about the Eagles' blunders, how they probably should have ran the ball, how Saquon Barkley probably should have caught that ball. And not a lot of people are giving the Falcons credit here, not only because of that drive with under 2 minutes to go where Kirk Cousins, you know, led that drive with big, giant chunk plays. That was really impressive. But let's also talk about that Falcons running game last night. The Eagles had no answers. It really didn't matter who was running the ball for them, but especially when Bijan had the ball. Algier was great too. But what did they end up averaging? At one point, I know it was like 7 or 8 yards a carry at some point in the third quarter. I don't know where the numbers finished, but pretty concerning for the Eagles' rush defense in that game. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really makes me wonder how good Pittsburgh's defense is because they weren't doing any of those things against Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh held them. I mean, they did score 1 touchdown kind of on a broken play, but man, Pittsburgh locked them up and to pitch a shutout, or basically a shutout against Denver. That Pittsburgh defense is tough to score on.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I do also have to point out, though, that the Falcons painted themselves in a corner week 1 because they were so predictable. Every time they lined up in shotgun, you knew they were going to be throwing the ball. Every time they were in the pistol, you knew they were going to be running the ball. So I wonder if that kind of like artificially made the Steelers look better. I mean, don't get me wrong. The Steelers have a great defense. That defensive line is really good. But when you're comparing those 2 games, I wonder if that made the Steelers look even more impressive in week 1. Time will tell, though, as we move on. We'll see.
Yeah, Atlanta was the only team week 1 to not run a single play action pass. And last night with Kirk under center, where he's more comfortable, they looked a lot better and they ran a bunch of play action passes.
Absolutely. And good to know that Kirk can be under center, right? Because those were the rumors coming out that it was because of his lack of mobility. There were all these videos from practice saying that he couldn't, you know, bootleg out and all this stuff. So now we know he's not super mobile, but he's not a total statue back there either, and he can be under center. So he's given defensive coordinators a lot more to think about. Let's review here the week.
Mm.
Look at all that red, Ryan. Look at all that carnage. It starts at the top with the Ravens, 2,304 eliminated. And then the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh top options all get eliminated. You and I each got by with the Chargers. Your entry got through on the Chargers. I got 4 through on the Chargers and 2 through on the Texans. So you and I are both in a really good place ahead of the game with equity heading into week 3 here. But that graphic says it all. It was an absolute bloodbath. But going back real quick to last night's game, I want to post this screenshot too. This is from the Discord channel from the guys over at Survivor Atlas. If you're not familiar with Survivor Atlas, by the way, go to survivoratlas.com. Get yourself on this Discord channel because it's just a bunch of Survivor nerds talking shit the whole time, and I absolutely love it. So this was some of the reactions last night when the Falcons beat the Eagles. Poor guy down there says, man, I feel violated after that loss. I think he lost 2 entries on the Eagles. That hurts. People are saying this is the worst Survivor beat since. Just some really good conversation. So again, if you're not a part of this community, make sure you go over to survivoratlas.com, get on this Discord channel. It's a lot of fun to talk to.
And Tony, it brings up the point that we've been talking since our first episode is weeks 1 and 2 of the NFL, gather information, right? And also the NFL, most games are going to come down to the last possession. I mean, that's the reality. There is so much parity. And, as much as we want to fade a team or, just assume a team's going to win and have this, thing mapped out, the NFL is built for parity. It's built because of a salary cap. And there's a reason that it's the most popular sport by far in the U.S. And that's because any given Sunday, any of that can happen. Any given season, you have 6 new teams showing up at the playoffs. So those first 2 weeks, you got to make sure you plan accordingly and pick the team you feel best about. And now is the time that I'm starting to, with a single entry, starting to look ahead and be like, oh, I really want to pick this team. However, I'm looking at next week. I'm looking at week 5 when they start doing bye weeks. Now that team that I was hoping to maybe save, I don't have that option. I kind of have to pick a certain team this week as I move forward, and I know we'll talk all about that.
Yeah, that was our first show. I mean, we talked on our first show about how you and I have a difference of opinion in that strategy. I start doing the mapping out week 1. I would argue you don't have the Texans anymore, brother. You're one of the 53% of people that don't have the Texans anymore. And I still have the Texans on most of my entries, on 4 of my 6 entries, and so I feel good about that. But I would argue that's why you've got to plan ahead, because you don't want to be put in a situation where you're missing a really good team down the road.
What happened to your other entries, though, Tony?
This week I lost 1 on I lost 2 on the Ravens. It's funny, man. These were my safer picks. 2 on the Ravens, 1 on the Lions. Those 3 were the safer ones, and then the Chargers, who were like the riskier pick in my mind, at least, were the ones that won easily and got by pretty easily there. So, 3 down on. Well, look at you over there, Mr. Cocky with the sunglasses. Ryan never loses. He's perfect. He does nothing wrong. This guy's never been wrong in his life whatsoever.
Had you listened to me, I said, be careful. The Raiders are not as bad as people think. And I said that Bucks-Lions game, I said, don't be surprised because the Bucks can score with anybody. It's going to be a last possession game.
I mean, I'm the one who originally told you that the Ravens could be in trouble week 2 because of the defensive line. I said that to you when we were in Vegas. But when you've got 10 entries, you either got to spread them out and take some chance. 9 entries coming into this week.
Film don't lie.
Don't lie?
Film don't lie. I said.
Oh, the film don't lie. Oh, yeah, man. So what should I have done? What would you have done with 9 entries last week? Well, you would have just put all 9 on the Chargers? You're full of shit.
I told you that I would, whatever you want, I do the opposite. So we're going to see you last longer.
There we go. So we started talking about trash talk on the Discord channel. We got trash talk going on this show. I love it. We got a special guest dropping in about 5 minutes again. I have no clue who the special guest is. They've got a tough act to follow because we had an awesome special guest last week. Yeah. Super Bowl champion Bryant McKinney was on the show, former Pro Bowler. And so we'll see who is going to be joining us here in the next 5 minutes. quick look here at the board for next week. This is from the folks over at Survivor Atlas, good friends of the show, excuse me. We've got the Bengals Commanders on top. That's a Monday nighter. We got 2 Monday night football games this week, Ryan, which is there an explanation? I mean, I know we've seen this before. We had this a little bit last year, maybe even the year before. So I'm not stunned that there's 2 Monday night football games, but I don't understand it. Like, why now and not weeks 1 and 2? Why not? Like, is there a holiday? What the hell's going on? Why do we have 2 Monday night football games? Do you know?
Well, I know that there's only certain months or weeks that you can have Friday night, Saturday night, Monday night football games, according to like some statute they made years ago. That's why otherwise the NFL would just commandeer everything from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They'd have it every week. I'm guessing that the fact that they had the international game pulled that away from the Monday night doubleheader that they've been doing in the past. And then but otherwise, yeah, I don't know why this week. But again, everything is money oriented. So if they can get 2 games on prime time that normally wouldn't be, why wouldn't they?
Yeah, I'm sure there's some dollar signs behind it for sure. And again, as we flash up the schedule for this week, I would argue, and we're going to get into this later, of course, I would argue both of those Monday games actually have huge Survivor implications. And I think that's going to be really interesting going forward. And actually the 3 of the 4 primetime games, like look at that Thursday nighter with the Jets. We're going to talk about that shortly. There's going to be a lot of people. Oh, absolutely. I think either way, you're either taking the Jets and you're rooting hard for them, or you're not taking the Jets and you're rooting hard for the Jets to lose, assuming that there will be a lot of people on the Jets here in week 3. Moving on here. Oh, I want to put this up too. This is our friends over at Survivor Atlas. Follow them on Twitter at Survivor Atlas. And once again, I know I said this already, but go to survivoratlas.com. You're doing yourself a disservice if you don't check them out. Check this. This is from the Survivor Atlas website as well. They have the team availability, and you can do this by, see those little boxes at the top, Ryan? Right now it's on ticket. That's on the entry. If you hit the little gray guy next to that ticket, then you can do it by person. So if someone has more than 1 entries, you can see how many people have the Texans left. But this is interesting because we're starting to get to the point where this matters, where you see a holiday team like the Texans that only have 47% available at this point. The Bills are down to 82%. How about Seattle down to 57%, another holiday team? I find that interesting because if we get to the holidays and it's far less than that, I'm sure it will be. There's probably going to be like 10% of people that'll even have Seattle or Houston left by the time we get there. So keep an eye on that on survivoratlas.com.
Here's a question for you, Tony. I think Carolina's the only team that has not had a single person through week 2 bet on them. Will they go the entire season without anybody picking them to win?
That's a good question. I don't think that's right, though, because remember week 1, wasn't there only one team? And I think it was the Rams.
Oh, the Rams.
So someone must have, I don't know who or how many, but someone must have taken the Panthers.
I don't think anybody were on the Rams last week, though. So will anybody be on the Rams at any point?
We'll see.
Not with their O-line.
Yeah, people will be on the Rams. Yeah, I think once they get those receivers back later in the season, the Rams have a nice little matchup with the Patriots at some point, too. I think someone will take the Rams. But you brought up the Panthers. Andy Dalton is now the starter in Carolina. And I got to admit, when I heard that news, my initial gut reaction was, damn it, it makes my path a little harder now to get to the finish. But I shouldn't be thinking like that because it makes it harder on everybody else too. And I should have confidence in my handicapping and my skills going forward. But it definitely throws a wrench in things and makes things a lot more complicated. What was your reaction when you heard Andy Dalton was coming in for Bryce Young week 3?
Yeah, well, I think Carolina certainly becomes a much more relevant team. And, I've watched a lot of their film now that I have to speak on them because they play the Raiders this week as one of the doing the pregame show with the Raiders. And their offensive line is not the issue, right? They got some weapons, actually. I mean, Adam Thielen has done a nice job in the past as a former Minnesota Viking. I've met him before. Deontay Johnson obviously got traded, and they have a running back by committee, but they have some talent on that offensive side of the ball. They have J.C. Horn in the back, defensive backfield. They have a quarterback that has zero confidence, and now you have a quarterback that's going to come in. He's going to get the ball out to the right people in space quickly. He's not a threat to necessarily go in and beat you necessarily, but Bryce Young has been losing those games for them. And
absolutely,
so I think that whereas my mindset was absolutely, I was going to put, take a long look at that game. It scared me because anytime, we talked about new coach, new quarterback. Yeah. I like to stay away. If I don't have to bet it, I would rather stay away, especially with one entry.
Absolutely. And our special guest has shown up, and I'm excited because I can see his name. Is this Marcus Robinson from the Bears? Is that who we got on here? Are you kidding me?
Robinson, my former teammate. Yes. Marcus Robinson. You can't see this dude because it's so dark in his house, but you know what? It's all good. What is that hat you're wearing, man?
Man, look, man, it's one of those. You can put it down and you can put it up. It's your choice.
Wow. Oh, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, man.
Sure, man. Awesome, man. I always like to talk football.
Marcus, I did not tell my co-host, Tony, who was coming on the show. So this is a surprise.
I saw that name pop up, and I knew who you were right away. Marcus, hold on, I'm going to test my knowledge here. Were you drafted? Were you drafted in 97?
97, yes, sir.
Nailed it. How about that for NFL trivia right there?
Pick to the Baltimore Ravens. Ended up in NFL Europe, was NFL Europe MVP. Then went to the Bears. Then went to the Vikings and played with me 2004 to 2006. And then bounced around after that a little bit. But one of the nicest people I know, one of the most athletic receivers I had the opportunity to play with, and probably the best jump ball receiver for sure that I ever played with. I mean, right up there with Moss, but it was, what do we call it, Marcus? Picking
peanuts. We're picking peanuts off their heads, baby.
That's what we call it.
They know it's coming.
I love it.
Right.
I'm so excited to have you join us, Marcus. As you know, we're talking NFL football week 3. Hopefully Ryan's prepped you a little bit and asked you to bring us a little lock for today. Who do you like in week 3, my friend?
You know what? It's crazy. My nephew plays for the Rams. So I'm going to choose the Rams over San Francisco. I mean, it's a lot of injured players. The Rams, Puka Nacua is hurt. We don't know if Cooper Kupp is going to play. Debo is out. Christian McCaffrey's out. So if you look at quarterbacks, I'm going to go with Matthew Stafford. I mean, he's a guy, they're 0-2 right now, but he's a guy that can put points on the board. And he can also, he's a veteran presence. So he can use different guys and variations. So I'm going to look at the Rams upsetting, everybody's looking at it that way, but upsetting the 49ers for sure.
Wow. And good point, bringing up those injuries. I saw a tweet earlier this week. Ryan, you might have even sent it to me. Someone was joking and said this game is going to be played inside of an MRI machine because there are so many injuries on both sides. So that's certainly something to keep an eye on here.
I was expecting me and Marcus to potentially get called up for this game because they have there's nobody left.
Man, listen, I got 2 plays from the 1-yard line in. I can do it. But besides that, man, I'm out of there. Listen, my body ain't able right now. But it was fun doing it, though.
Yeah,
absolutely. Hey, if you guys are watching this, Marcus Robinson from the Chicago Bears has joined us. Please smash that like button, share this, spread the word that we're having this conversation here. Any specific matchups that you like in this game, Rams versus 49ers, X's and O's wise?
Well, my nephew versus everybody. He's a very
love it.
He's been in the league 9 years. He played with Kansas City for 5, so he's traveled a little bit going to the Raiders, and then he went to Baltimore Ravens. Now he's been with the Rams. So, he's a very shifty guy. Once given opportunities, he's making plays. So just give him an opportunity to make plays. 2 of the starters are down now. He's the man to go to now. So, hey, I told him you got to step up to the plate, man. And every time they give you opportunity, you got to make those plays. And that's the biggest part of the game. When given the opportunity, make the plays.
And he's obviously,
Everything.
and we're talking about Demarcus Robinson.
Yeah, DeMarcus.
Now, just so the viewers know, Marcus has no inside information that he's using. We're not, right? It's not anything
No.
from DeMarcus's mouth, right? Because this is talking about a survivor pool, right? This is just Marcus being, he's Uncle Marcus, and he's an opportunity for his nephew to shine out. He has in the past, obviously with Kansas City and things, but it will be a very interesting game. I do agree that oftentimes when you have a decimated roster, which both of these teams have, you tend to lean towards the better quarterback. And I think Matthew Stafford's probably the best quarterback in the NFC. I don't know that anybody really, in my mind, jumps to a forefront other than him. And a lot of people have been on, kind of Stafford's, him being one of the best and most underrated quarterbacks in the NFL for a long time. Greg Cassell, a person that I follow closely and have met with and talked to, he told me about Stafford years ago. What do you think, Marcus? I look at what the Rams did offensively against the Cardinals, and they looked a little lost. Like they didn't have, granted, when you get behind in the first quarter by a couple touchdowns, you become one-dimensional. And that certainly, impacts your game. But what do you think? Obviously Minnesota showed that San Francisco has their share of warts as well, and they beat them, through the air a lot. What do you think the Rams can do specifically, besides get the ball to your nephew, to capitalize on kind of, we got Bosa's banged up, we got Fred Warner's banged up, you've played many more seasons than I did. Talk about what they're looking at film this week, knowing that both teams have a decimated roster.
The biggest thing now is a lot of guys, you got to have patience. You don't have the normal group of guys that you normally have to make those big explosive plays to make sure the team is moving. So now you got to have patience. You got to take those dink and dunks now. Now you got to run the ball a little bit more. Now you can't force down the throw fields. You got to just have patience. And who's going to do it better than Matthew Stafford, a veteran guy, understanding his situation, understanding what's going on. Now he's going to make decisions based on, okay, cool, I don't have these other guys. Now let me make these little small check downs. Let's get in field goal range. Make sure we don't lose the field goal range, not try to score a touchdown. Let's make sure we get the field goal versus trying to force something. So those are the little bitty things you got to kind of look at. I remember coming from Baltimore, we had a 2,000-yard running back, and we didn't throw the ball. We dressed only 3 wide receivers in a game. Then you go to Minnesota, you got Moss, you got Nate Burleson, you got Kelly Cam, you got you. So now all of a sudden it's 3rd and 15. Yeah, we going forward. We ain't trying to get to punt position. No, we going for 3rd and 15. So your mindset has to kind of change and react to what your game plan is going to be and react to what athletes you have on the field.
Marcus, are you concerned at all about that Rams offensive line? I know we alluded to those injuries already. There's no doubt Stafford is really good. I'm just a little worried that he may not have a lot of time to throw in this one. I know the Rams are getting back their left tackle, Alaric Jackson, who was suspended for the first 2 games. So that's going to help stabilize things a lot. But the interior of that line, even some of the depth guys on that offensive line are going to be out on this one. Does that concern you at all?
Let me ask you a question. Did Matthew Stafford play for Detroit Lions?
He sure did.
Okay, so there you go. So he understands getting the ball out your hands quickly. He understands good offensive lineman. So he lived it in Detroit for quite a number of years, and then he got Calvin Johnson. He was able to take some plays and take a hit and throw a deep ball. But right now, he understands coming from Detroit. I don't have the offensive lineman that I normally have, so I got to get rid of the ball.
That's a great point. And, the reason I would be hesitant to bet this game, is we've talked about in the past, Tony, is, division games are always hard to navigate, right? Especially when you have these X factors like, I don't know if Alaric Jackson is going to come in and be the left tackle that he has been in the past. I don't know if, Demarcus Robinson is going to step up and be the number 1 receiver,
we know he is, right?
Well, So yeah, some of us know and believe, but you know, he's probably never been thrust into this situation where since college you're the guy, and then you got two really good coaches that are able to capitalize on different things. I want to talk to Marcus real quick about the difference in coaching that you experience in the NFL, and you and I have talked about this, Marcus, in the past. We went from a very player friendly coach with Mike Tice in 2004 and 2005. In Minnesota. And then in 2006, we had Brad Childress. And Brad Childress, for our listeners out there, is the opposite of a player-friendly coach. He said it, and Marcus can attest to this. The first meeting we had as a team, he said, I have one opportunity to do this. I'm going to do it my way, and you guys are going to either jump on ship or you're going to be out of here. And and it was so funny because, again, we have Marcus Robinson, probably at that point in 2006, the best jump ball receiver in the NFL. How many touchdowns did you have in 05? I mean, you had double digits somewhere, right? It was a lot. And so we had goal line offense set up, and Marcus was the only receiver. And generally what we would do is, you know, we'd have a check with me type of system, or you hear a lot of people say kill, or you'll give two play calls in the huddle. And Brad Childress, because it wasn't his idea, he didn't want to have the opportunity to do 40 gut, which is just a run up the middle fade. It would be called 40 gut fade in the huddle, just alerting, hey, if Marcus has one-on-one coverage on the outside, we're going to throw to him, because 9 times out of 10, he's going to pick peanuts and take, you know, and moss, as people call it now, right? But Marcus was doing that before Moss was really doing it. Okay.
Right.
And Brad Childress, and I remember Marcus going up to him and being like, Coach, can we, you know, I know you want to do 40 gut, totally fine, but can we call 40 gut fade, just so if the quarterback sees it, and it was Travaris Jackson at the time, rest in peace, you know, he can just throw it if he likes the matchup. And what Brad say, Marcus?
He was like, well, they know it's coming, so we can't always, you know, run the fade. I said, man, I don't care if they know it's coming or not. I've been making money off this. Like, we've been doing this. Like, when Moss was even with me in 2004 or 2005, 2004, we ran 40 gut fade. Look, if it's one-on-one on the outside, Pep, pick your poison.
Yeah.
Drop it one step, get it up there. But Brad was totally like, well, you got to run some. No, we don't. We ain't got to run nothing different. They know it's coming. It's coming. And we still score on it. So, you know, those are the different types of coaches you have. You have guys that are willing to say, hey, listen, the quarterback and wide receiver on the same page, let them work it. Or they're like, it's my way or the highway. And that's how we do it. You know, and you know what's real crazy, Ho, to look back on? The following year when they let me go, they picked up Adrian Peterson. Yep. And they had Randy Moss. Can you imagine me, Moss, Adrian Peterson?
Ooh.
Come on. We
that defensive coordinator, they'll be having nightmares the day before that game.
Playing games with everybody, you know what I mean? But, you know, that's what happened when coaches change. Mike Tice was a coach that allowed us to Dante and, well, Moss grew up in that system with Chris Carter and Brian Billick. They grew up in that system where they can change things and do things and, you know, improvise. When some coaches, hey, they don't want you to improvise. They want you to do exactly what they said. And that's the kind of guy he was. And that's what it was. But, you know, it's playing that game of football, man. If you get the right coach in the right space, man, you can do a whole lot of things.
And you see that there's very few coaches out there left that have that type of like my way or the highway philosophy, right? Even Bill Belichick, I think that's why he didn't end up getting the job, even though he's the most brilliant mind probably of coaches. Tom Coughlin, another coach that I played for, that was just one of those guys. I was just like, hey, this is the way we're going to do it, right? We're moving out of that and making it more. And we live in a very, you know, instant gratifying world now, and very selfish world now, that people just expect like to have their voice heard. Marcus, we're going to end with this. You got any good stories about me when we were teammates? Anything that comes to your mind when I
I got one. So I was how old was I? I was maybe 29, 30. We did the pod. You know, we were doing body fat. And so we did the body fat test, and then I get in the pod and I come out, I'm less than whole. He was like, wait a minute. How are you less body fat than me? What you mean? Man, look at the piece of paper, bro. My body fat is less than yours, man.
That
But
sounds like competitive Ryan Hogue to me. I can totally see
first
that.
of all, this is news to me. I don't remember this story. And
you don't remember that.
Marcus was known. Me and Joe used to call Marcus Bad Body Award winner because he was so athletic, but his body with the shirt off. I'm sorry, but he was the guy at the beach that kept his shirt on as a 30-year-old grown ass man. And I don't know how that bod pod was lying to him because that was not a single ab I saw on that body.
He has receipts. Marcus has the receipts. It was on a piece of paper.
He's correct. I had no abs, no nothing. But that bod pod gave us the percentage. He walked around with his shirt off, his little six-pack showing. He young. Nah, the bod pod showed something a little different. He could not believe that my body fat was lower than his. He couldn't fathom that. But yeah, nah, Hogue, man, you know better, man. Come on, man. My body fat was low. I was slim to the rim, but I just ain't sure in the muscle factor. That's all.
Marcus, I got one question for you before we go, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Ryan and I talk on this show a lot about revenge games. Games where, NFL players are playing against their former team, maybe someone who cut you, or maybe it's a revenge game because it's a divisional game and this team whooped your ass earlier in the season, etc.
Okay.
Can you give us any insight from a player's perspective? You've played for a couple different teams. I don't remember off the top of my head if you've had any revenge games, but can you give us any insights into does that make a difference in is this team more likely to win or not? Because there's guys on the team that might be a little bit pissed off. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I can. You know what? It's hard to say because it's 11 guys playing 11 guys. I mean, everybody doesn't have to have a revenge game. You could be mad at the DB that was talking trash the last game we played. You say, okay, now I'm going to put something on him. But the other corner, they have nothing to do with it. The nickelback, the Mike linebacker, Sam. So they had nothing to really do with it. So it's hard to say a revenge game unless you got 3 or 4 multiple players, like the Bengals playing Kansas City. You get multiple players trash about Kansas City. Now they're like, oh, okay, you know what? And then you know what? Actually, when I played with the Bears, we played Minnesota, and what's the linebacker? Rudd. I think his name was Rudd.
Wayne Rudd.
Edgar fumbled the ball, and Rudd picked it up and went for a pick six. Well, not a pick six, but a fumble. He run into the end zone. Edgar chased him down. And he turned around, and he was pointing at him as he backpedaled into the end zone. The offensive line took very revenge. The next time we played Minnesota, he tried to come out the game because he's like, they gunning for me, coach. Yeah, they was hitting him after the play. So, I mean, sometimes right now in our league right now, we don't have the same kind of guys that do those things. I mean, we see guys, a quarterback get hit and nobody do anything. They just let him late hit and then they go pick him up. It's no, look at the guy from the Colts. Y'all see the guy from the Colts? Instead of peeling back and hitting the linebacker, he put his hands up and hit him with his, come on now.
Yeah.
And they to put their full helmet in your chest. So the game now.
To your point, Marcus, right? Unlike basketball where, you're 20% of the team when you're out there, like you can go and just make it personal and go dominate the game yourself. Football, the reason it's the best game in the world is because you can do your job, but the other 10 guys, if one of the other 10 guys don't do their job, it won't show up, right? So you can be revengeful all you want, but that's where it becomes like, oh, if it's an offensive line thing, right? If Dwayne Rudd for the Vikings, former linebacker, right, was talking his stuff, then we can make it personal that next game. But Tony, you have a very fan perspective, Tony, of saying this revenge game. But in reality, like players wise, there's so much going on through our heads. Like we can't think. Maybe I'm like, okay, I want to beat Marcus because he's trying to guard me and he put his hands on me and talk trash to the thing. But it's again, I could beat Marcus one-on-one 10 times. I don't get the ball thrown. Nobody's gonna know that I beat him. So
yeah, a lot of good points. Hey, last thing I want to say, I collected football cards growing up, Marcus. And your 97 Fleer Ultra card back in the day, that was the shit. That's how I remembered so quickly that you were drafted in 97. I used to have like dozens of those things, man. And they went up in value at one point when you were crushing it. So it's an honor to talk to you today, man. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely, man. And I still got some cards, man. I keep those cards. Fans send me cards. I still sign them, mail them back, man. It's a privilege to be able to do that. So I really took gratitude towards it. And I also have my own collection of my own cards, that have been given. So, man, it's awesome.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for the time, man. This was awesome. Ryan, thanks for organizing this. So good to talk to you, man.
Absolutely. Hey, I want to say one thing. Hope, I want you to I don't know if I thank you enough, but that NFL broadcasting we did and you spoke up for me, man. I really appreciate that. That was awesome of you. I was nervous, and when I was doing it and you pointed out I was nervous, but I was and I really want to thank you so much, man, for doing that for me. I really appreciate you standing up for your boy, man.
Hey, you're a brother. Anytime. And next time I'm in Chicago, we're going to grab lunch again. All right.
I'll let your boy, man.
All right. Appreciate
you.
Y'all
enjoy the show, man. Appreciate you.
Thanks again, man. This was great.
Absolutely.
Ryan coming through. What an incredible guest. That was awesome, man. That was a great surprise. I did not see that coming. That was phenomenal.
Good dude.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk games this week.
All right. Let's jump into it.
We're doing it a little different this week, right? Especially that we're 30 minutes into this already. We're going to kind of go back and forth game by game. I'm going to start with the Jets Patriots, then Tony will follow up and so on. Just so we don't talk for 2 hours. Appreciate you. By the way, listeners, please, we want your comments. Post comments. We will comment. We will respond back to them. Also, I am going to put up 10% of my entry in Circa. If anybody wants to make me an offer in the comments, please do so before I put, and I'm interested. I would love to take you along the journey with me. And hopefully I'll stay around.
We got a little question here before we jump in. It looks like this is a fantasy football question. Lamar and Kincaid for Kyler and McBride. Do you take that offer in fantasy, Ryan?
Wow. Well, Kincaid's been a big time kind of bust so far. People had him as top 3 tight ends.
I think he'll come around now, right?
And same for McBride, to be honest with you. He hasn't done much. It ends up being Lamar versus Kyler. I think Kyler has been fortunate to play against some weaker defenses, and that's why he's had such good games. I'm sticking with Lamar and Kincaid. I think Kincaid will come around, and I just like the flexibility of having players on different teams as opposed to being stuck with a quarterback, tight end. It also depends on who else you have, but that's my opinion.
Good point. And real quick, someone asked the link for the website, survivoratlas.com. You can download Discord from the App Store and then get it by going to survivoratlas.com. All right, without further ado, Jets Patriots Thursday night. What do you got, Ryan?
Yeah, first thing I'm looking at is the competition thus far. Jets have played San Francisco and got blown out and then barely beat Tennessee, right? The Patriots have played Cincinnati and Seattle, 2 teams that I really think are probably going to be playoff bound. And they played both of them really tough. Could have beaten Seattle, to be honest with you. Went to overtime. My initial thought is that I think New England's probably better than we thought. Jets, you've heard this before, O-line issues. And injuries on defense, right? They need more in their passing game because Wilson hasn't really been a game wrecker yet. He had a tough matchup last week with Snead and things like that. But their running game, they're really leaning on that. And when they have it, they're good. When they don't, like they didn't against San Francisco, they're not. And again, it goes back to when you become one-dimensional, you're really hampered. When you go down 14 points in a game, you're really hampered. And that's what's happened, across the league. Pats are banged up as well, though, and it's a short week, and that's never a good thing. I'm keeping an eye on Jacoby Brissett. He's a little banged up. Their defense is going to keep them in every single game. So the Jets aren't going to, blow them out. So it's going to be a very, very close game. I really like Christian Gonzalez matching up with Garrett Wilson and kind of negating that advantage, right? So they're going to have him travel. He is truly a shutdown corner. And so I think it's going to be a closer game than expected. I do think there will be several people that are on it survivor-wise. Me with one entry, I am going to stay away from it. But if I had multiple entries like you, Tony, I might take a look and just be like, you know what? I kind of like the Jets here. But I also think it's probably a coin flip game, and I am not willing to risk my one entry on a coin flip.
Yeah, worth mentioning the Jets week 4 play the Broncos, week 8 the Patriots again, and then week 10 they've got the Cardinals. If you consider the Cardinals a weak opponent still, maybe you don't, and that's fair. But yeah, those would be the next kind of most logical choices. Let me ask you this, Ryan, before we move on to the next game. What do you like better, Jets Patriots or Jets Broncos, just from a matchup perspective? Because that Jets Broncos game is next week. So there's a lot of people who are probably saying, I want to use the Jets in the next 2 weeks. Which one should I use? Which matchup do you like better?
Jets Broncos, even though I think it's at the Broncos, right? And obviously Denver is always a tough place to play. Ask Pittsburgh. I just don't see the Broncos being able to score a lot of points. And as long as it's a close game, Aaron Rodgers, I believe if you give him the ball with a chance to go down at the end of the game and win, he will figure out a way to get you 3 points, especially in that thin air. So,
gotcha. Appreciate that. Moving on. Next game, we've got Seahawks Dolphins. Ryan just mentioned the Seahawks. We had the percentages up from Survivor Atlas earlier showing that a lot of people have burned through the Seahawks already, and they are a holiday team. So that's the first thing you need to be aware of is you can get yourself a nice little advantage if later in the season you're the only one that has the Seahawks, or more realistically in Circa Survivor, you're one of the 2 or 3% of people who still have the Seahawks. So for that reason alone, I would caution you from using the Seahawks here, but you can completely understand why someone might want to, because Tua's out for the Dolphins. He's definitely going to miss this game. And you kind of like the idea of picking on a backup quarterback here. Skylar Thompson, he's an okay-ish backup quarterback, not terrible. But what did we see when a terrible backup quarterback in Malik Willis went up against the Colts last week? A lot of people, I understand the rationale, tried to pick on the Packers here in this situation without Jordan Love, and 187 people had to learn the hard way. You don't always win when you pick on a backup quarterback. Sometimes the rest of the team rallies around that backup quarterback. I think that's what we saw in that Colts-Packers game. I wouldn't be stunned to see it in this Dolphins-Seahawks game, but I also want to say this. I'm a big Seahawks guy. I think this is a playoff team. I think Mike McDonald could be coach of the year. I bet him at 20-1 to win coach of the year earlier this year. And I really like this team. I just don't think strategically this is the best time to use them. And the last thing I'll say on this game is that Kenneth Walker's probably going to be out again. And Zach Charbonnet is back up. He only had 2.7 yards per carry last week against the Patriots. And so the run game is very questionable right now for Seattle. Oh, and one more thing. I always am a little bit weary. It's not a huge deal in my handicapping, but I don't like taking teams off of overtime game, whether they won or lost, because it's just a little more wear and tear that went on their bodies the week before. So that's a little tiny something to consider in this game. Ryan, you got anything on Dolphins Seahawks?
Yeah, the only thing I was going to mention is look at the first 3 weeks who the Seahawks have faced as quarterback. You got Bo Nix, Jacoby Brissett, and now Skylar Thompson.
Good point.
The ironic thing is, like, all those games were, pretty close. Like in the first half, at least, you were freaking out because you thought the Seahawks might lose, and then they go to overtime with, a far less talented roster with New England. So I think Miami's absolutely in play. I'm staying away from that game.
Got it. All right, next game, Browns versus Giants. Do you trust Cleveland here?
I think it's going to attract some people for sure. Obviously, you see the big win percentage. And don't forget they held the Cowboys to right around 15 first downs and 250 yards. They gave up only 1 touchdown to the Jaguars. Giants defense is actually decent. They move, I feel like they allow people to move the ball from the 20 to 20 pretty well. And then, they held Washington to 7 field goals. They would have won that game with a kicker. Obviously, Graham Gano got
good point
warm-ups or after the first kick or whatever, and then they should have won that game. But I'm looking at both offenses are bad, right? Flat out. But Giants actually statistically have a better quarterback, running back, and a wide receiver. So I'm expecting a low scoring game, right? So this one's not for the faint of heart. So if you are going to bet this, which there will be definitely people on the Browns, it's going to be a close game. The Browns aren't built to blow anybody out unless their defense scores 1 or 2 touchdowns. The thing is, I don't see the Giants scoring more than 9 points. I just don't. I think it's a very live game for Survivor for me and others. I think it'd be ballsy, and if you want to fade the Giants all year, go for it. But it's definitely in my it's a potential spot for me here. But I do think that the Giants are feisty enough to keep it close.
And much like we said for a game earlier, the Browns, week 4, play Vegas. Week 5, they play Washington. So a lot of people are saying, do I want to use the Jets this week or next week? Do I want to use the Browns this week or next week? This is a strategy to consider. If you have more than one entry, you could use one on each. Let's say you have 2 entries. You could use one on each this week, and then you swap them the next week. And so that is something to consider moving forward as well. Next game up, we've got Panthers, Raiders. This one is fascinating because I think before the news that Andy Dalton would be starting, I think a lot of people really liked the Raiders in this one, rightfully so. Now that Andy Dalton is in there, it really makes me pump the brakes and reevaluate this Panthers team. This was a Panthers team. I'm almost embarrassed to admit this. I actually liked them coming into the season. They upgraded their offensive line. They've actually been pass blocking really well the first 2 weeks. I know you can't tell because their quarterback hasn't been doing much, but Andy Dalton is more than serviceable. He's 36 now, but I would still say he kind of reminds me of Jacoby Brissett a little bit. He's a veteran. I think he's a little bit above average, and he's not going to make too many stupid mistakes. Almost a game manager, I think, will be a fair label for him. And with a good offensive line, and it is a good offensive line in Carolina, and a couple of weapons at wide receiver, we may see something from this Panthers offense. I am concerned because we're going to probably say this every week. Derek Brown is out for the Panthers, and that is a massive loss to that defense. But here's the problem with the Panthers. Bryce Young was their biggest problem, but we also saw them having special teams gaffes. Didn't we see them week 1 getting a punt blocked? We've seen them get gashed on defense as well. And when you've got the Panthers traveling all the way across the country in Vegas, which is not an easy place to play, I think the Raiders are pretty safe here, but so much less safe than when we saw Bryce Young. And sharp bettors have moved this line from about 7 down to 5.5 now, about a 1.5 move on the news that Andy Dalton is in there. So proceed at your own risk, but this one's really tempting. And here's the best part about taking the Raiders. There's not a ton of opportunities to take the Raiders later in the season. They have 2 games against Denver, divisional opponent. But boy, you feel really good coming out of week 3 with the Raiders win in Survivor. I feel like it gives you a step up on people who are going to maybe take Cincinnati this week or the 49ers this week, something like that. Any other thoughts, Ryan?
Or maybe the Raiders are good, Tony. Quit hating. The only note I wanted to make is the Red Rocket, Andy Dalton, came in last year, week 3, same time, and they put up 27 points against a good Seattle defense, and he threw the ball 58 times. Big thing for me is Carolina's 2 for 22 on the year, third down. 2 for 22. They can only go up from there. The Raiders are not an easy team to play against if you're just stepping in as a backup quarterback. So that's going to be interesting. But I do think Carolina's defense, can do some things and keep it close, at least in the first half. We'll see.
All right, next up, we've got Saints and Eagles. I also want to remind people, if you have comments, questions for Ryan and I, you agree, you disagree, feel free to shout us out in the chat. We got a comment here. That was dope. I think they were referring to the surprise guest, Marcus Robinson, that we had in here earlier. Go ahead, take it away with the Saints Eagles.
Yeah,
Ryan.
according to Game Picks, 50-50 right now, money line for both these teams. Some added intrigue now that the Eagles lost and they're 1-1 now. When you're looking at playoff positioning, that head-to-head comes in place. And I think both these teams will be in the mix come playoff time. I think it's going to be a fun matchup against 2 solid teams. You got the Saints that have taken it by storm. They've scored on every meaningful possession, I think, right? This season with Derek Carr as the quarterback. And the Eagles are coming off a game they definitely felt like they let get away. I think the Eagles are really good in the secondary, but their run defense, obviously, we talked about that. It was exposed big time. And guess what? They have the Saints that are running the ball as well as anybody. And Kamara, obviously, is one of the best in the league, dual threat. I know you love the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson revenge game angle here, former Saint that kind of left in a, not a very good positive fashion. I think he got traded, right? If I remember right. Eagles offense, I'm keeping an eye on A.J. Brown. Is he going to be back? If he is, and then obviously Marshawn Lattimore, is he going to be back for the Eagles? Or sorry, for the Saints. The thing I really like about the Saints, they have talent on defense at all three levels, right? That defensive line, that linebacker, Demario Davis, I don't think gets enough credit. He's one of the best middle linebackers in the NFL. And then they have, really good secondary. That matches up really well with the Eagles. But the problem is the Eagles can hurt you at quarterback. They can hurt you at running back. They can hurt you at tight end. They can hurt you at wide receiver. And they looked like, though, yesterday a far less explosive offense. Would you agree, with just Devontae Smith as their number one receiver? Devontae seems like the perfect Robin to somebody's Batman, like A.J. Brown. But I don't know that he is good enough to just be like, hey, I'm going to be a number one receiver like he was at Alabama and just take over games. He, in the NFL, I don't know if it's his size or his inability for like breaking tackles or what, but he's kind of a guy that catches the ball and goes down. And whereas A.J. Brown is like Mr. Yak. So that's a really, really important thing. Tony, your audio I can't hear you, Tony. So I can't see a lot of people betting this game because either team has a great case to win. So I'm staying away.
Yeah, sorry, I had the mute button on. I was just going to say, I think you're absolutely right about that Batman and Robin thing. And I don't think there's a chance A.J. Brown plays in this game. All the reports I'm hearing is that he's going to miss another week. And so I think that's a really good point on your end. And both of these teams have good spots to use them later in the season. So I've got no interest in this game whatsoever. Moving on. 49ers, Rams. I know this is my game to lead with, Ryan, but I am curious to see what you think of this one because we did talk about it a little bit off the top, so I won't spend too much time on it. But this was a game the 49ers were favored by 4.5 points on the look ahead. And then with all these injuries with the Rams, all of a sudden the 49ers are much bigger favorites. It's more up around a touchdown now. No Cooper Kupp, no Puka Nacua. I think this is a really good – I hate to disagree with our special guest, Marcus Robinson, but I think this is a really good opportunity to take the 49ers in Survivor on a week where there's not going to be a ton of people on the 49ers. We talk over and over about how you want to zig when other people zag in Survivor. You want to be on an island. I think because so many people are going to be attracted to the Browns, so many people are going to be attracted to the Bengals. I think this is an opportunity to take Kyle Shanahan, who owns Sean McVay, besides one playoff game, which the 49ers should have won if their safety didn't drop the ball in the fourth quarter anyways. Kyle Shanahan owns Sean McVay. I feel really good here in this spot, taking the 49ers. But strategically, there are some good opportunities to use the 49ers later in the season as well. They play the Cardinals twice. They play the Bears. Some really good spots later in the season. So keep that in mind. But I really trust the 49ers. It feels safe to me, especially given all the injuries on the Rams side. And I know the Niners have injuries too, but way more on the Rams side.
Yeah, what's causing me pause here is the 49ers look like a different team when Deebo Samuel doesn't play. I mean, he is the ultimate, Swiss Army knife, whether they, and he presents so many problems for a defense when you're having a game plan and you're spending the whole time of figuring out where's number 19 on the field, right? And I remember as a practice squad guy, I would be the Deebo Samuel and I would have the 19 jersey on, and everybody, whether I was lining up the backfield or their whole defense is predicated on finding 19 and then figuring out from there. Without him on the field, right? Now you can take now Brandon Ayuk comes into play, and he's looked like a shell of himself. He's looked like a guy that's taken a month off and didn't run a single route, right? Kittle's been super effective, but guess what? Now you can pay attention to Kittle. And so Brandon Ayuk, it's a kind of a, you're making 20 million. Okay, well, you need to show up now because, and while the Rams had a terrible game, right? They're too well coached to show up like that. They're 0-2, right? They're desperate. If they want to stay in the hunt, they have to find a way to get a win. 49ers also are coming off a game when Fred Warner talked to the team in the locker room after the game against Minnesota and was just like, hey, it's not an effort thing. We got to get it done. I kind of like that, but I'm keeping an eye, like I said, on Bosa and Fred Warner.
But hold on. You've said twice now that I don't think Fred Warner's hurt, to my knowledge. Am I mistaken? Hufanga's hurt for them and Bosa's hurt. Am I missing something?
Warner got banged up in the Vikings game on the same play that Bosa did. Now, he ended up coming back and playing, but it's certainly something that I'm keeping an eye on. And,
Gotcha.
But yes,
cool.
I think this is a game that I'm, definitely looking at as one of my potential survivor or my potential survivor pick. But Marcus definitely brought some good points up and put me on pause a little bit.
Good point. All right, moving on here. This is going to be tough for you, Ryan, because I know these are two teams that you like a lot. So I'm looking forward to hearing your breakdown here. Texans, Vikings, take it away.
Yeah, I can't pick Houston because I picked them already. So that's something to be mindful of. And also Justin Jefferson coming off a deep thigh bruise, quad contusion, as they call it. I had one of those. I got on a kickoff return, a guy's helmet went right to my quad, and we don't wear thigh pads as wide receivers. And let me tell you, it was incredibly painful. And I don't know that he would be practicing all week. If he does, he's just there just to try to loosen it up, but it's going to be super tight. He's going to have to get treatment around the clock, and he's going to have to play through some pain, right? That's a big deal, obviously, because their offense is predicated off Justin Jefferson giving the quarterback a clear picture, right? The nice thing is Houston has Derek Stingley Jr. to combat a star receiver and at least shadow him around the field and feel at least decent about that matchup. It's really interesting because this is a tale of two opposing predictions before the season, right? Everybody was on the Houston bandwagon and everybody thought Minnesota was going to be one of the worst teams. While Houston has definitely lived up to that billing, I think Minnesota has, shocked everybody. And people recognize, like, if Sam Darnold plays well, this team is really, really good. And Brian Flores is a really good defensive coordinator, has all the right pieces to be a good defense. Houston really stresses you out, stretches you, I should say, from an offensive standpoint. So if I'm the Vikings defensively, like, I have a lot of things to be mindful of. Joe Mixon, of course, that ankle situation. Is he gonna play? If he plays, is he going to be fully healthy? You got Stephon Diggs, and I know you love a good revenge game. There's a bunch of guys that have played on both teams, but Stephon Diggs in particular left with a lot of controversy. He basically forced his way out of Minnesota.
Good point.
Right? He's played Minnesota since then, but this is his first opportunity to play in Minnesota. He is going to be on a mission. I would say this with full confidence that he wants to show everybody, because the reason Minnesota got Justin Jefferson was because we traded Diggs, and so he's going to want to show everybody that, hey, you guys miss me, and here's the reason. I'm really that. So that's fascinating. Two well-coached teams. It's going to be a classic. Whoever wins the turnover battle of this game is going to win the game. And it's a toss-up game. It is alumni weekend. Normally I would go back. I have my sports broadcasting duties in Vegas that weekend, but it is alumni weekend. And so that's kind of fun for Minnesota, but it's a toss-up game. I'm staying away.
Yeah, I'm staying away too. I love the idea of saving Houston until the very last minute when few people have them, when they've got an edge in a matchup. So I'll be off of this one as well. Next up, we've got Lions Cardinals. I think this is going to be the highest scoring game of the weekend. This is two high-powered offenses. I know you haven't really seen it yet from the Lions. They drove down the field a lot versus the Bucs, but they just couldn't get it in the end zone. They had that gaffe at the end of the first half where they had too many men on the field, 10-second runoff. They don't even get a field goal at the end of the first half. But I still have all the faith in the world in the Lions offense. I'm on Ross St. Brown. Keep an eye on his injury status in this one. The Cardinals, smoked the Rams. Ryan, I think the Cardinals are turning into the team you do not want to play in Survivor. I remember our first episode, we talked about how the year prior, they beat the Steelers in an upset. They beat the Cowboys in a huge upset. I believe it was week 3, knocked a whole bunch of people out. And so I think the Cardinals are a scary team because, yeah, their defense stinks, but their offense is so good that if that defense can get a fortunate fumble or a fortunate tipped interception or can overperform, the offense is going to be there. And I think the Cardinals are just primed to be an upset team this year. They're also a dead over team this year for people who like to bet on the NFL. With all that being said, I have no interest in either the Lions or Cardinals here for Survivor. Lions are obviously a Thanksgiving team. Cardinals, I'm not taking a dog this early in Survivor, so no interest here on either team for me.
Yeah, same. And, it's one of those games, could have playoff implications for that head-to-head. It's going to be two desperate teams because Cardinals are 1-1, knowing that, hey, the Lions were one of the top teams last year, but I'm staying away.
All right, next up, we got Colts and Bears.
Colts, Bears. All right. This is going to be a hard game to watch. You got solid defenses and inept quarterback play thus far. I've been fading Anthony Richardson while everybody's been lauding him prior to the season starting. I was fading him, and he never passed the eye test for me. I think this is an ultimate coin flip game. I think Indy needs a win badly, right? Bears backed into week 1. Indy 0-2. They play hard. They just don't have consistency at the quarterback position. And actually both teams could say that. Bears nasty on defense, but their offensive line is just offensive. It's just not good. I think Indy will overwhelm them up front because Indy, if you remember that week 1, they actually overwhelmed Houston's solid offensive line up front when they drop back to pass at least. And Caleb's going to try to do Caleb things, right? Try to be a hero. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. That's a coin flip. I'm leaning Colts, but I don't like it.
Yeah, only thing I'm going to add to this game is just keep an eye on the injury report. There are a ton of injuries in this one, especially on the Colts side. Blackman, their safety, missed last week. DeForest Buckner is hurt. It looks like he's going to be out. Pass rusher Latu, who's their Latu, I don't know how to say it exactly, but he's their rookie pass rusher that they got in the first round this year. Kwity Paye was out, so major injuries to that defense, especially along the defensive line. And I know you'll agree with me on this, Ryan. That defense may not have been very good to begin with, and now they're banged up. Some of their star players are banged up, so be careful on that one for the Colts. With that being said, maybe it's an opportunity if you really like the Bears to get super sneaky in Survivor. I wouldn't do it, but I bet there'll be some people out there who try to because of the injury situations with Indianapolis. Before we move on to our next game, which is Ravens-Cowboys, I want to go ahead and talk about Survivor Sweat for a minute. Ryan mentioned he might be looking to sell 10% of his entry. I'm going to go ahead and pull up what I think these are still on the website now. We've been talking for an hour, so it's possible that these have been purchased within the last hour. We've got 99% of one entry for 10 grand. That seems a little high, if I'm being honest. We've got 25% of another entry for 2,500. That also seems a bit high. But we've got 5% of an entry, very affordable price, $700. This is your chance to get 5% of $14 million. Again, this is Survivor Sweat, their marketplace. Go to survivorsweat.com. If you're hearing Ryan and I talk about our quest for 14 million and you want to get in on this, this is the only way to do that now. The only smart way to do that now. You can't just get into Circa Survivor. You have to get connected with someone else who already has entries. 2 more slides here. How about this one? 40 G's, Ryan. 99% of entry. They must really like their entry. That's a high price. Sellers set the price. You can also go to Survivor Sweat and you can make an offer. So if 40,000 is a little too much for you, but you want to counter offer with 8,000, you can go on and offer someone what you'd like.
Tony,
go ahead, Ryan.
Keep these up. My question is, what I like is I like seeing the price per percentage, right? It looks like pretty consistent. $100 seems to be the price per percentage. I know that on the actual website also it shows what the last one was sold for, right, in the marketplace. Yep. So that's a good tool. And then tell me what micro share means. I don't know what that is.
Micro share, I got to be honest, I don't know what that means either. That's a good call.
Okay.
I can break down the pick control. That's important because you're either along for the ride, say you buy 5% and you don't have pick control, the owner of that can do what they want, or you could say buy 55% and you now control the pick and you're the one giving the picks into the proxy, etc. So I can speak to pick control. I'm not sure what micro share is. I'm curious. I'm going to get in touch with those guys and see what that means. But definitely go to survivorsweat.com. By the way, they don't just do the marketplace. They've got articles on their website as well. It's a great resource for anybody who likes Survivor. Whether or not you're doing Circa Survivor, any NFL Survivor pool person would enjoy survivorsweat.com. Okay, moving on here. We've got Cowboys and Ravens. I don't have a whole lot to say about this game, Ryan, because one, both of these teams are holiday teams. The game's a coin flip. I only want to take a holiday team in Circa Survivor if I have an edge or if it feels a lot more secure than other games that week. And this game checks neither of those boxes, so I have no interest in that. I think we can move on. You agree?
I agree.
All right, so next up is your game, Chargers-Steelers.
Yeah, this is one. If I'm betting the under. Pittsburgh has scored a single touchdown this year, and they have 520 total yards. But their defense has given up about 515 total yards, and they only give up 70 yards on the ground. The Chargers obviously want to pound the rock. Jim Harbaugh, we've talked about that. Their offensive line is rock solid. I'm really fascinated to see right tackle Alt versus TJ Watt. And their tackles, both their tackles actually are the two highest rated tackles in the NFL right now. The Chargers defense has allowed 21 first downs. That's unbelievable, and only given up 400 total yards. Fields still has yet to complete a pass, I think, between the hashes. Chargers match up nicely here. I like the Chargers for 12-10, but it's not a survivor game, as I already picked the Chargers, and but I do like the Chargers in just a nail biter, 12-10. I'm not. What do we got for comments down here, Tony? Go ahead.
Colts play. This is about the last game. Colts play simple coverages defensively with Gus Bradley. So if there's a week where Caleb Williams could be successful, it might be this week. Coin flip game, though. You disagree with anything in there?
No. I like what they had to say. So yeah, this one 54% win probability for Steelers. I actually like the dog here, Chargers. But again, similar to Ravens Cowboys, this is not one. Don't get cute. Like, I wouldn't be surprised either way. The Steelers have to show something offensively. This is one of those games where Justin Fields might get exposed, and you might see Russell Wilson week 4.
Interesting. Nice little prediction or potential prediction there. That's interesting. Ryan, I apologize. I was distracted with our comments coming in, hitting buttons. So you may have mentioned this already. Did you mention that the Chargers are staying out east for this game after Carolina? They're not traveling all the way back home. Not only is that less travel for the Chargers, but I think the team bonds that week because there's no family distractions, etc. I saw that with the 49ers when Harbaugh was their coach. I've seen that with the 49ers when Kyle Shanahan's their coach. They travel. The team, like, you got roommates and stuff in a hotel, and I think that's good for football. I think that's good for a football team. So to me, that makes the Chargers a little scary this week as well.
Yeah, agreed.
Moving on here, we've got Chiefs Falcons. Fresh off of that Monday Night Football thrilling win for the Falcons. Congratulations. You get to play Andy Reid, and Andy Reid has more rest and more time to prepare than you do because you're on a short week. The Falcons showed me something. They saved their season. I just think in Circa, once again, I'm going to sound like a broken record. The Chiefs have two holiday games. This game doesn't present enough of an edge for me to pick the Chiefs. The Chiefs are down Pacheco now. He's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks, or was it 6 to 8 weeks? Hollywood Brown's out. So I even have a couple of concerns for the Chiefs here. The only thing that picking the Chiefs would accomplish for you in this game, survivor strategy-wise, is you'll be on an island because nobody else will pick them because everybody else is saving them. I think I've only seen like the Chiefs be picked like 24 times this year or something like that. So I have no interest in the Chiefs here whatsoever. I bet there'll probably be 5 to 10 people on them, though.
Upset special for me. Falcons win this game.
Really? Ooh. All right. So if you were thinking about getting cute with the Chiefs. The guy who warned you that the Raiders could upset the Ravens just said the Falcons could upset the Chiefs. That's good stuff there. Moving on. This is a big one here. Bucks, Broncos, Ryan. Take it away.
Yeah, quarterback battle, right? We talk in college football, it's all about who can win up front. In the pros, it's all about quarterbacks. And you got the hottest quarterback in the league, Baker Mayfield, and the coldest quarterback in the league, and not cold as in good, as in really struggling, in Bo Nix. It's hard to believe in Denver here. Their defense is a lot better than Tampa has faced, right? Because Tampa, look who they faced. They faced Detroit and Washington. And eventually, you would think that injuries are going to catch up to Tampa. I think they've just had more talent than the teams they've played, but they keep losing guys. Vita Vea just went out, and he's questionable for this week. He has an MCL grade 2 sprain. You know, I will say this. Why Denver can play really good defense is because they have a shutdown corner in Patrick Surtain II, right? And he's probably the best cornerback, arguably, in the league. The difference with the teams they've played and now is that the Bucs have more than just Mike Evans. They have Chris Godwin. They have, right? They have multiple guys that can hurt you. Plus Baker Mayfield is playing with about as much confidence as possible. Tampa definitely has holes, and Denver should be able to run, especially without Vita Vea, if Vita Vea misses it. But I think Tampa can score on a bad day, and Denver will have trouble keeping up. Tampa absolutely has value here for Survivor because their next 8 weeks after this week, they have literally zero value. Tony, aren't you proud? I looked ahead. Tampa legitimately in the next 8 weeks. They have a bye in one of those, but I would say they're coin flip games at best, if not underdogs. So I really think that Tampa's a sneaky pick here.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there. Mike McGlinchey, the right tackle for the Broncos, he's out. They spent a lot of money on him. He was replaced by a guy, I can't even pronounce his name. I've never heard of this guy. Alex Palszewski. I know I'm mispronouncing that. He was an undrafted rookie last year. How many snaps has he played in the NFL? 2. So you've got a right tackle, his first ever start in this game. But as you said, Vea may be out at the defensive tackle position, and Cansey, their defensive end, may miss his 3rd consecutive game. So injuries in the trenches on both sides for these guys. I will say this, though, Ryan, even though I agree with you, the Bucs don't have a lot of opportunity that you'd want to use them in the near future, they do still have 2 big games against the Panthers later in the season that people thinking way ahead might want to save the Buccaneers for. Moving on. Jaguars-Bills. This is one of the 2 Monday Night Football games. I think this game is fascinating from a Survivor perspective. I think the Bills are worth using here, guys, because they're not going to be the number 1 selected team in Circa. They're not going to be the number 2. They're not going to be the number 3. They may not even be in the top 5. So there's not going to be a lot of people on them. And I think the Bills have a really good chance of beating the Jaguars. I'm going to give you one devil's advocate note, though. The Jaguars beat the Bills last year when the Bills were 4.5-point favorites, if you remember that game in London. And that does scare me a little bit. But from a matchup perspective, you've got to love what the Bills have been doing defensively despite injuries. All the fits that the Browns gave the Jaguars, I think the Bills can do very similar things to the Jaguars and make them look bad. I just think this is a fantastic opportunity to use the Bills. And very much like you said about Tampa, even though the Bills are good and they've looked good, you look at their next 6 or 7 games, there's not a ton of opportunities where you'll want to use them. Now, they do have the Patriots 2 of the last 3 weeks of the season, so I also like the idea of saving the Bills until really later. But not a lot of opportunity to use them soon, and I think the Bills match up really nicely here with the Jaguars. Just beware, the Jaguars upset them last year. Any other thoughts here, Ryan?
If you look at they have a common opponent, which is rare this early in the season, right? Bills blew out the Dolphins and Jaguars lost to the Dolphins. So,
good point. Very good point. Your last game here, Packers-Titans. What do you got?
Yeah, Malik Willis revenge game, Tony. There you go. Although the coaching staff has changed, so I would argue like he probably has a bone to pick with the coaches rather than, I mean, maybe the upper management a little bit, but really, can it be a revenge game if they gave you an opportunity to, be a starter? So I don't know. I think it's going to be a boring game. I think it's one of those bet at your own risk because it's going to be low scoring. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be close. Look what they did to the Bears offense, right? The Titans, right? They embarrassed the Bears offense. Although nobody's really made the Bears offense look good. I expect the same against the Packers offense with Malik as the starting quarterback. Packers defense is solid at all three levels. I think it's going to be a 10-9 game. I would not bet this game. And I think some people will be on the Packers, and I could definitely see the Titans winning, actually. So I think, the Titans probably are looking at themselves, and they have two games that they could be 2-0. And both those games were last possession type games. They've had some just egregious quarterback error, right? And that's what's ended up them losing it. If Will Levis, who I still believe in, I think if they can clean up the turnovers, right? I think, the Packers aren't built to just go out and run through you. In fact, that's the only thing they can do with Malik Willis as a quarterback is because I think he threw it, 14 times last week. I really like a low-scoring game here. Titans probably have learned from their mistakes now. And again, though, expect a 10-9 game. I'm staying away.
Yeah, I'm staying away from this game. There's another podcast that I listen to, the Beating the Book podcast, and the host, Gil Alexander, he always asks the guests the same question, which I love. He says, if you lived in a bizarro world where you were forced to bet every single NFL game, but you got one free pass and you didn't have to bet it, which game would you pick? And for me, if he asked me that question, it would be this Titans-Packers game. I just don't know what to expect in this game. Nothing would really surprise me here. But I do want to throw one thing out there, Ryan. Our last episode, you told the story of Greg Williams pulling you in and saying, hey, you used to play for these guys. Tell me all their signals, and how he got information from you as a player. And you and I theorized that something similar could be happening in the Steelers locker room, and that could give the Steelers an edge over the Broncos. Lo and behold, the Steelers won. I'll also mention that Sam Darnold, former quarterback for the 49ers, beat his old team. And so maybe Malik Willis, I know it's a different system. I get it. But he also knows some of these, cornerbacks' tendencies. Some of these guys in the secondary knows some of their tendencies, some of the linebackers' tendencies. And so there could be a little bit of an edge here for Malik Willis. I'm just saying.
What wasn't he? Yeah, didn't he get traded after training camp? So wasn't
really recently? Yeah. Willis has not been with the Packers very long.
I would argue that he knows more about their offense than Sam Darnold knows about the Niners offense.
Yeah. Good point. Maybe that gives them an edge. I'm not touching it, but we're at least giving you something to think about. That's what we do here on this show. We don't tell you what to do. We tell you different perspectives to consider so that you can make up your own mind. Last game here, Commanders, Bengals. Maybe I saved the best for last because I think this one has massive survivor implications. By the way, this is a Monday night game. Ryan, do you find yourself, be honest with me here, when you're picking your survivor pick, do you ever have a little itch and it says, you know what, this game's later in the week. I could sit here and watch these games on Sunday. Or if you're considering a Thursday game, wouldn't it be nice to win on Thursday with the Jets? And then I can just sit back and watch the carnage on Sunday. Do you ever find yourself considering the timing of these games?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think Thursday games are so nice because then you can just cheer for all the underdogs. Whereas Monday, if you see it goes chalk and it comes up to you and you know that a lot of people are on Cincinnati or Buffalo, and now you're just freaking out because everybody is cheering against you. And so, yeah, it's definitely it's stress inducing for sure. However, this week you might not have a choice. We'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting with two survivor options on Monday night. I really am interested in the selection count. We're going to be back on Saturday giving you the selection counts live about 30 minutes after they're announced, 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. But back to this game. I love the Bucs in this game. I think that they can absolutely. We have a little excuse me. Bucs. I love the Bengals in this game. Let me get this up here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I like the Bengals in this game because I think that they can spread the Commanders out a lot. I got my B's confused. Bucs, Bengals. The Bengals can spread the Commanders out a lot. If you watch this show or any of the other podcasts that I do, week one, I talked about how the Commanders have the worst secondary in the NFL. And the Bucs week 1 were going to expose the Commanders secondary. Ryan, we were watching those games in Vegas. I said St. Juste is going to get burned. He got burned. The Commanders are a team that when they're facing a deep wide receiver core, they will get exposed. When they're spread out, they will get exposed. And the Bengals are a team that can spread them out, especially if T. Higgins is in. But even if Higgins isn't in, they've got 3 above average wide receivers, and they can do similar things to the Commanders like the Buccaneers did to the Commanders. So I love the Bengals. I probably have the most certainty in the Bengals winning this week. There's one big problem. The Bengals play the Panthers, the Giants, the Raiders, the Titans, and the Broncos later in the season. So I've got a decision to make. Do I take what I consider to be the safer pick on the Bengals, or do I save them strategically for later in the season? And I think a lot of people are going to be asking themselves that same question. So I'll leave that up to you folks out there, but do keep an eye on if T. Higgins plays in this one. I think that's a big one. Any other thoughts on this one, Ryan?
I mean, the Bengals are desperate. 0-2 start. I mean, Commanders kind of lucked into a game last week, but I will say that against a feisty New York Giants defense, right? And I would say that the Vikings had more trouble against the Giants defense than they did against Washington's defense. Okay.
Good
Washington
point.
was able to score every time they touched the ball. So, right, the Bengals, they're still trying to figure themselves out offensively, especially with different holes that they're trying to fill from a production standpoint at the wide receiver position. I agree that their secondary definitely isn't a strength of theirs, but I will say St. Juste had a really, really good game last week. I think he had a fumble recovery maybe and 3 pass breakups or something like that. But yeah, if the Bengals go down 0-3, right, especially, if you're looking at first round, you're going to Kansas City in the playoffs if you make the playoffs. And so I think their sense of urgency is there. So this is a good spot. Certainly one of my top 3 potential picks. Tony, gun to head for you. You have 6 picks remaining. How many different teams do you think you are going to spread it on? And do you think about is there an advantage when you have 6 picks to go 6 separate games that you feel good about? Or does it just get too convoluted and confusing? Or would you prefer to just go 5 on one team and 1 on the other? What's your thought process there coming from multiple picks?
Yeah, it's a good question, Ryan. I mean, we saw a lot of people lose last night with all 10 of their entries on the Eagles. And I'm sure if you put a microphone in front of their mouth and ask them, they would say, I wish I would have spread things out a little bit, right? But then the problem is when you spread things out too much, there was one entry week 1, Ryan, he had 10 different teams with his 10 entries. And when you do that, you're not winning all 10, right? So it's almost like a death by 1,000 paper cuts where you're choosing, how you want to go out, right? And so either way, pick your poison. PIP, which is something that I learned earlier today, PYP, when we had Marcus Robinson talking about his time in the league. Pick your poison. Which way do you want to go? Now, I will add this, though, Ryan. If you have multiple paths, that helps you when uncertain things happen in the future. Nobody could have seen Jordan Love getting hurt, right? So if you have one strict path and you're going 10 on this team, 10 on this team, 10 on this team, and you're lucky to survive, well, when something crazy happens, like a quarterback on a team that you already picked with all 10 of your entries week 1, goes down, or one of their opponents goes down, you can't really adjust. You're not flexible. Whereas that person that has multiple paths can say, you know what? I'm screwed on 6 paths, but these 4 paths, I'm looking good, right? So there's a lot of advantages and disadvantages to both. And maybe the right answer here is sometimes you put all 10 on an entry and sometimes you spread it out depending on the week. That's kind of the approach that I like to take. I haven't put all my entries on one yet, but I've done it in Circa Survivor in the past successfully. And so it's an option that I'll sometimes use.
Bengals would be my pick this week, and they still might, but they do play Carolina, I believe, next week. So that's something I'm thinking about. Tony,
Andy Dalton revenge game, brother.
Okay, whatever. Tony, who is the number 1 defense in terms of yards given up as of now?
Yards allowed, I'd have to say the Steelers.
I just looked it up. Steelers are 5th
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, is it the Chargers?
Chargers second.
Okay. Yards
Miami's
allowed.
fourth. Houston's third. Tennessee number one. They've given up
Ooh.
206.5 yards a game. 413 total. I mean, it makes sense.
You got
the
two
Bears did
stud
nothing.
cornerbacks. That helped a lot for sure. And so they've totally rehauled that defense, and they're getting good returns on that moving forward. I would not have guessed Tennessee top 3 for sure. So yeah.
All right.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, that was a lot of fun. Ryan, thanks for connecting us with Demarcus Robinson. That was Marcus. My bad, Marcus Robinson, who played in the league for a number of years, and as you said, was really great with picking peanuts. That was awesome. Great conversation.
Another special guest coming next week.
Oh, I'm excited. You've crushed it with these last two, man. You brought us 2 really good ones. So, folks, if you're out there, please hit that subscribe button. I know you're out there. Please hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. For folks watching on Twitter, go ahead and follow Ryan and I. I'm going to try to get our names up there. There we go. There's our Twitter handles. Go ahead and follow us, spread the word, retweet, etc. We love doing this show every week. We're going to be back Saturday night live, 9:30 p.m. Eastern time.
Any chat that we missed? I feel like there was one about the Chiefs that came up, and just briefly, I couldn't see it though.
Yeah, Zokold said Chiefs have barely won both of their games. Wouldn't be surprised. I think that was in reference to me saying, or one of us saying the Falcons could beat the Chiefs. So yeah. And like we said, they're vulnerable with Pacheco now being out. Curious to see what their run game is going to be like. Did you see who they brought in?
Oh yeah, Lamar.
Who is it?
I mean, sorry, Hunt.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. We just got another comment. This just came in. Odds of hitting a 3-team money line parlay for a 7-point favorite is 42%. Pretty much what you're doing with Survivor. Good stuff there. We've had a lot of great comments today. Love interacting with you guys. Ryan, enjoy the rest of your week. So hold on. You said you're down to 3 teams. Remind me who they are again. Bengals?
Cincinnati. San Francisco.
Okay.
And I can't remember the third one.
Was it the Jets? Or no, you said no on them.
No.
The Raiders?
Oh, Raiders.
Okay. So those are your 3. And are you leaning one way, or do you know now and you don't want to say? Where are you at?
I'm leaning towards my pick would be Cincinnati if I wasn't looking long term. If I was just going week by week, I would pick Cincinnati.
We agree there. Okay.
I feel the best about that game. I will say that.
All right. Yeah, same page there. But now you're starting to think strategically because we got to week 3. I love it. Yeah. All right. Have fun, everybody. Enjoy the week. Keep an eye on that injury news. Best of luck in week 3. Take care.